Hello, friends. So today I'm talking to this gentleman who, as you can see from the photograph, can we say he served in a certain role in the British Army? We're not at liberty to say which role that is. I'm pretty sure you've worked it out already. Served for over 20 years, only to be discharged for not having a certain procedure. So let's get into it. Steve, how are you, mate?
Hello there, Chris. Pleased to meet you.
Yes, and you too. It looks like you're not stuck in a dark room like me. You got some sun on your face.
For a change,
How's
y-
are you in Newcastle?
yeah, I'm here in the sunny northeast of England. Sun
How
always shines up north.
how are the chemtrails today?
Surprisingly, there's none. Although I do video the those strange cloud formations that we seem to see in the sky a lot these days. I've got recorded evidence from the last probably 12 months at least.
When you say there's none, the thing is though, I'll bet the sky is still milky blue. It's not. It's not the crystal blue that it should be.
Yeah, you're getting some strange combinations nowadays for sure.
I remember during the lockdown when there were no planes flying, it went back to that beautiful like royal blue, maybe crystal blue is a better word that we had as kids. I haven't seen it since we were kids. Um, People now think that a blue sky is this what this blooming white sky. But so Steve, just tell us your story and how come we're chatting on the show today.
Well, first and foremost, thanks very much for having me on your show. I've watched your show probably for the last year, I would have said, which is very entertaining. You get some interesting guests and talks. My story, it's quite a challenging one. I don't know where to begin almost, but I'm going to guess some of your more astute viewers would have figured things out already. And I'm pleased to mention that I used to be in the poncho field repair unit, where I used to sit all day fixing damaged ponchos for the Her Majesty's finest, so they could go off and do their thing under the protection from the weather, underneath repaired ponchos. But as you could probably, as we've discussed as well, essentially I've ended or come to a close with my military career. One of the reasons for that is simply because a
You
certain procedure came along and I wasn't too keen on it.
Yes, you weren't the only one, mate, were you? I mean, utter insanity.
Yeah,
Insanity. I mean, at what point? Ah, ah.
it's taken the world by storm, and I mean, you might have a wider circle of friends than I do, or former comrades, but I would pretty much say most, if not all, of my fellow comrades fell for the
The
procedure.
propaganda.
Yeah,
The propaganda, and let's be honest, none of the military top brass put a stop to it, did they?
none whatsoever. I've made my point well and truly firmly established to as many people in the military as I could essentially, and I've just been completely stonewalled, written off, declared insane, um, branded a conspiracy theorist, um, basically told to fall in line like everybody else, like a good little soldier. Well, I think that might have been a mistake for some people.
Steve, just say your screen's wobbling there quite a bit. I don't know if you're.
Okay.
I don't know if you're.
Might be my legs on the table, mate.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's not a good advert, is it, for the British forces? A, that they force you to undergo something that we're now understanding is, I mean, the amount of Marines that are either no longer with us, or what I'm thinking of one mate in particular, oh man, he got damaged really badly. My family alone, Steve, 4 people affected by, that's just, just to explain, I've got no sway with other people, have I? If people are going to go and have that thing, they're going to go and have it. You can't talk them out. You just can't, no one cares that. This is a crazy thing in life, is everyone thinks their opinion's valid. It doesn't occur to them that actually, no, there's other people that know a shitload more about you, about an awful lot of stuff. They're the people you should listen to. No, the BBC, they've told me I've got to do this, and when I go to Tesco's, I've got to hop up and down on one leg and shove a carrot in my ear, and that will protect me. Righto, okay, yeah, good luck with that. I tell you a positive thing. This has completely revamped my understanding of well-being. I was always very skeptical about it, Steve, because I've eaten vegetables for 20 years now. I'm on what you call pH neutral. You might hear it referred to as the alkaline living. My body is what it should, so I physically cannot get sick. So when this all came about, I knew they were lying. First thing you do if people are suffering is you give them cut price vegetables, or you give them for you subsidize. You stop bombing like Ukraine and spending millions on that. Give people free vegetables, especially the green ones. So I knew it was a hooky narrative right from the start.
I knew it was bogus from day one, simply because it was on the television. I haven't watched the TV for, I'm going to guess, around about 10 years. I haven't voted for liars for probably over 15 years. In fact, I'm quite proud to admit, and I mentioned this to several of my former colleagues, that I used to be what was classed as an anarchist. Now, that gets a bit of a dirty word. It's a bit of a dirty word in mainstream society. An anarchist is usually referred to as somebody who, embellishes disorder and chaos and violence. And of course, it couldn't be further from the truth. It refers to people who can live in harmony without the need for rulership and dictators.
Well, just going to chuck up the portrait here, Steve, of our king. This portrait that's been done by, is it Jonathan Yeo? Have you seen it?
I've heard about the butterfly, but I've not seen it yet.
It's a blood red portrait, so symbolic of the dark side that seem to have had their way with Prince Charles, getting him to their World Economic Forum and okaying their new world order. And it's actually got the monarch butterfly on his shoulder. I'm just...
Yeah. When I heard that on the news, because I heard the news on the radio, I'll be honest, I don't watch the news on the TV. It's complete... Think of a swear word.
Yeah.
It's complete crap. But I did hear the painting on the news, and I thought immediately, I bet you any money that's a monarch butterfly, and I'm sure many of your audience will understand the symbology behind that.
Yes, exactly. Were you disappointed, mate, in you're in a so-called... I'm trying to think my words carefully so we don't get in trouble with the...
Elite poncho repair outfit.
Yes.
We're the finest saws in the British military.
Yes. I'm going to be honest, I don't get the poncho bit, and I think a lot of people out there won't, but I think we know what unit you were in, Steve. It's, let's just say, I think every young man in this country who's played Call of Duty probably got some sort of aspirations there. But was it upsetting? Because was it upsetting to be in this illustrious outfit, and then seeing people just, I don't know how to say it, but I've just got to say this, like, I don't usually use the word sheep, Steve, because it's usually used as a slur, and isn't it? I don't mean that, but what I mean is when you see people just acting like lemmings, because the only people that told you to get this thing was the BBC. I know the military then took it up, but it was the BBC. There was no health initiative. What I mean is nothing come through people's letterboxes saying this is the scenario. You are we require you to go and no, just off the BBC, mate.
Well, several years ago, prior to any medical intervention that's been going on in recent years, I wouldn't say I was writing a book, but I was certainly taking lots of notes with the potential for writing a book. And essentially, I'll cut the chase. It was about brainwashing in the military, because what I could see was a lot of young individuals, idealistic, passionate, patriotic, professional, who could not think using their own rationale for a millisecond. And I got into several unpleasant conversations, should we say, from people who were adamant that they were capable of using their own mind. But when I tried to explain how the mind worked, and bearing in mind I'm not a psychologist or a doctor, but I do understand a subject quite deeply, and that's called the occult, which I know you speak of in certain contexts. And the occult is, in some ways, it's about understanding how the human mind works, a little bit about psychology. I understood that members of the forces were essentially obeying the diktats of a superior force, a mind controlling element, and they had essentially become obedient order followers. So let's not use the word sheep, let's use the word order followers, but it's essentially the same thing. And if people are embarrassed or angry about that, well, they need to start being honest with themselves. The entire military, and as much as several young men would want to join, as I did, essentially want to join a completely broken and disheveled organization which is run by the business interests of a cartel from a certain country, which I probably can't mention on YouTube. The middlemen in this are an entity called the government. And for those who don't speak Latin, the word government actually means mind control. It means gubernare mentis. Gubernare mentis means mind control. That's the state of the nation. People have fallen hook, line, and sinker through mind control for something that's inevitably going to be a really, really regrettable decision for many, many millions of people.
Exactly. A lot of people during the last 3 years were saying to me through the channel, Chris, when are our military going to come and rescue us? And I had to say to them, listen, that's not the military's. I mean, yes, it is the military's role. They're supposed to protect this country. But I said it's not like that. When you're in the military, you just follow orders. You're not an enlightened you're not awake, and you're certainly not enlightened, You believe that not obviously not everyone in the military, but the thing is, you believe the propaganda, because if you didn't, if you to ask questions about, say, what happened in New York and Washington that time, you'd realize you were part, of a massive dark deception, and you'd have to leave. So the answer to the question is no. The military are not. When you're an order or follower, you're very low on the advancing scale of enlightenment. Let's say, and this
Massively.
is no.
The clue's in the word, Chris. I mean, a soldier. The word soldier, and it might not be the Oxford Collins Dictionary definition, but in etymological terms, a soldier is a soul dyer or soul dead, i.e., no higher rationale, no enlightened thinking. I mean, even if a soldier gets promoted, he becomes a corporal, and a corpse is a dead entity. Do really well, follow the 3 degrees, the third pathway on the pathway to your higher, let's say, Freemasonic-esque career ladder is to become a sergeant. And that word sergeant is a French word that derives from a term for servant. So all the way through, I mean, even the rank structure has 1 chevron, 2 chevrons, and 3 chevrons. And anyone who studies anything about Freemasonic societies will understand the significance of that symbology.
Why is then Freemasonry? Why is it so? All right, I'll rephrase that. Why is it so big in a certain unit?
It's big throughout all corners of the world, essentially. Certainly the tenets of, let's say, secret societies in general pervade throughout almost all institutions, especially British institutions. You could say Britain is the, in occult terms, it's almost the head of the snake, essentially. Why is it? I don't know, but certainly in the military, you could say lots of Freemasonic occultism is certainly on display in broad daylight through the various insignias, through the language, through the symbols alone. If you can read the symbols, and I'm going to guess 99% of the military have got absolutely zero idea of how that works. But it has. If one was to study the history of warfare, for example, the Battle of Lexington and Concord in the U.S. Revolutionary War was steeped in masonry and followed a certain calendar. That calendar still pervades through modern military campaigns. And I mean, if you want, I'm quite happy to discuss some of that during your show.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, let's talk about one particular date, and I don't know if it's ever been mentioned on your show, Chris. March the 22nd, and that was a date that a certain individual in the government mentioned to the British public that they had to go into self-isolation, lock themselves down, and imprison themselves in the comfort of their own homes. That date is known in a certain calendar as the satanic season of sacrifice. That's one of the biggest dates, second to Halloween, you could say, in a certain religion. And that religion is something called Satanism. That date features significantly. And again, I would encourage anybody, especially anybody in the military, to go and have a look at certain dates or certain instances on that date. So March the 22nd, we're talking about the US invasion of Libya. We're talking about the Iraq War shock and awe campaign. Let's talk about stuff of a more civilian nature. Let's talk about the Westminster Bridge terror attack, the Belgian bomb, mass shooting in Colorado, many other such things.
Yeah, I'm just looking on the internet here. We had Black Death. Stephen II elected as Catholic Pope. Turkish Armada leaving Constantinople. Yeah, well, 322. That's actually that's the number of the Skull and Bones Lodge, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, the number 2, 2 and 3 have got very special meanings. You know, is it all coincidences? But if you go back and look at all the ancient philosophers and wise men, they all talk about how the universe can essentially be spoken about in the language of numbers. And many of the secret societies, of course, use numbers, numerology, gematria. Calendar dates as well are specifically important. Not just to certain religion. Well, in fact, all religions.
The English Football League was established. I bet they had a chuckle at the implications of that.
Yeah, I believe Twitter was founded. I'm not sure if it was the 22nd or certainly about that time, i.e. the vernal equinox, because that's what we're talking about. It's, again, I'm sure your show's not the format for discussing what all that means, but the vernal equinox, the satanic season of sacrifice. Just to add some meat on the bones there, Chris, we've mentioned a certain self-imprisonment was announced to members of the UK and beyond on a certain date, March the 22nd, the season of sacrifice. Isn't it a very peculiar coincidence that perhaps the most important date in the satanic calendar, it's a date known as Halloween, Samhain, that was the date when the second UK lockdown was announced. Funny that, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's not funny to members of the occult though, Steve, is it? Because they believe that they draw great power from numerology and sacred geometry and doing rituals on these certain dates.
Yeah.
It probably sounds a bit bizarre, doesn't it, to people that haven't really studied this sort of thing? But
yeah, to anybody who hasn't studied it, I mean, this is the key, of course. If you don't speak the language, you don't understand the conversation. So if you don't understand gematria, you don't understand numerology, you don't understand anything of the occult languages, then all of this, of course, is either, at best, it's a conspiracy, or at worst, it's complete nonsense. And of course, not many members of Her Majesty's forces understand anything to do with the occultism. But let's mention, do you know what? We've mentioned dates. Let's mention a particular date which has just been and gone, May the 1st, which you may recall is the date given for the birth of the Illuminati, the Bavarian Illuminati. It's also the date on which a very specific counter-terrorism operation was conducted, known as Operation Nimrod. Everybody who plays Call of Duty kind of fancies himself as being the fourth man on the balcony. And I'm sure you can allude to that as being the Iranian embassy siege. Now, isn't that quite unusual how that very operation, named after a dark, satanically endowed individual, Nimrod, isn't it funny how that was conducted to mark the 6 days of Beltane? They even had a film named after it called 6 Days.
Yeah, it does. It like I say, if you said this to me, I don't know, 20 years ago, it would have sounded bizarre. But now, I mean, it's like this. this cabal, this global network, who it's not hard to see who they are. You've just got to understand things like the Project for New American Century that infiltrated Bush's cabinet prior to Iraq and subsequently Afghanistan. You just need to look at this global network. These individuals are hidden in plain sight, is what I'm trying to say. And then realize that if they can lock every single person on the planet in their homes for the best part of whatever a 2-year period, and those that understand health, well-being will know that don't solve nothing, but and then at the same time they can mass force not people like ourselves, but the vulnerable members of society that follow the propaganda. They forced over half the planet to take something that wasn't even tested. Not that someone like myself would even take any of that nonsense anyway, once you understand how it works. This is a powerful cabal. They are powerful. Yeah. They know what they're doing. They got every single news channel on the planet to go along to, because they control them. Yeah. They got everyone to go along with it when it was like Iraq and Afghanistan. They control everything. So no, it's not hard to believe that they have a secret, esoteric methods of communication, Steve, and that they're pulling one over on everyone because everyone's so gullible.
Yeah, you've nailed it exactly. This cabal are not necessarily so powerful. It's because they rely on one thing. They get away with it simply because they rely on one thing. And this is one of the reasons I like watching your show. It's because you mention the egoic character defects of human nature. This is what the cabal rely upon. And this can be narrowed down into a 3 core aspects. And this is essentially the meaning behind the religious Holy Trinity. It alludes to actions, emotions, and thoughts, or heart, head, hand in certain traditions. What this means, put it in a Freemasonic format, the 3 degrees of Freemasonry. And just for the record, I don't have any connection with Freemasonry whatsoever, other than I've studied my enemy. What this alludes to is ignorance, apathy, and what have I said? Ignorance, apathy. Hey, I forgot. Can you believe
all right,
that?
well, I got one for you then, but I know lots of Freemasons, and I think it's just a recruiting ground for the people that go up.
Oh yeah,
the people that go to the Committee of 500 and all these sort of things, and the people that are plucked for certain positions in the cabal. Because let's be honest, most Freemasons, probably many listening now, wouldn't have a clue, probably even what we're talking about.
Oh yeah.
The whole thing about Masonry is it was essentially it was Eastern Enlightenment doctrine brought back in secret code after the Crusades by people like Knights Templar, etc., and it essentially Enlightenment doctrine is understanding that we're all one humanity, we're one energy, we're one universe, we're one everything, and as such you should bear no malice towards any other individual. So there's your war struck off immediately. You can't be
Precisely.
enlightened and believe in war. That it don't work like that. And well, here's the thing. The Masons I know don't practice that. There's people they hate. There's people that I'm not. This is not a crack at Masons. I don't care what people do with their lives. It's not a decision I would make. I like I've got other interests, but what I'm trying to say, Steve, is it gets confusing because we're talking high up esoterics. We're not talking about Smudge who goes to the lodge on a Friday for a bit of a ritual and a beer with his mates. I don't think they're trying to take over the world, and I think this causes problems because if you're in your masonry and you're all loving it, and then you hear someone on the internet saying, "Oh, they're all satanic," and you know damn well that you're not, and you go to a weekly meeting and it's Dave from the butchers and it's Freddie from the fire station and none of you are satanic at all, and it just gets confusing. But we kind of talking, but when you see the Hollywood symbolism, things like pyramid stage at Glastonbury, the checkerboard floor, which they seem to try and cram into almost every Hollywood movie, the stairway to heaven, the pillars, which are an awful lot in popular culture. Then it indicates there is something going on. I would say higher up there.
Yeah, I would definitely say that. It's, I'm not having a pop for a minute at Freemasons at all. I study Freemasonry, massively interesting. Essentially, it is, if it was used correctly and used for the benefit of all, it would be a fantastic means of enlightenment. This, sadly, enlightenment is kept hidden, hence the term occult. That's what the word occult means. It means hidden. Certain knowledge of enlightenment is kept hidden from the masses to help benefit the few. It's as simple as that. Many of these symbols we're seeing it more so. I mean, the recent music event, was it the Eurovision? I didn't watch it, but that was steeped in dark occultism.
Oh, it was geez, if there's ever a time to wake up, it's just I mean, yes, hang on. It's just so dark. All the colours they use now, you can see immediately. Yeah. These are not colours of love and kindness and enlightenment. It's always red and black, isn't it? And it's always, I mean, the British Act this year was 4 lads who were basically sodomizing each other on stage. Yeah. Mock sodomizing. I mean, the public are just blissfully unaware, aren't they, of the symbology. Exactly. You've got Simon.
The very same. Sorry.
Go on.
The very same people who would openly mock me, criticize me, and call me out as being a conspiracy lunatic will have absolutely no understanding whatsoever of the things which are on plain sight, day in, day out on the TV today, because there's meaning behind it all. And anyone who fails to see that is simply living in complete ignorance. There was an occult author you may have heard of called Alice Bailey, and she wrote a book about 90 years ago, I believe now. It was called Externalization of the Hierarchy. And it was a massive prediction on how the world would shape up to where many of these satanically imbued rituals would be done in plain sight for all to see, and the masses, the hordes of the ignorant public would have no idea as to what was behind it all. And that's the shape of the world today. It's all in plain sight.
Yeah, here's the thing though. So, like, excuse my French, but I couldn't give a fuck what anyone else thinks. It, you know, for me to, if I had to go, I don't know, walk in a pub and like agree with everything that my mates were, that I'd be going backwards, Steve. I'd be saying, God, I've acquired all this knowledge. Now I've got to pretend that I don't know this stuff, so I can, so I can, like, talk about, which booster did you have? And that is the conversation that the lads were having in the pub. They're like, which one are you? And it's cool. They're on their fucking journey, and I don't give a I wish them all obviously, I wish everyone the best. But I'm just saying that because, no one should feel like narcs that you're on an enlightenment journey. It's the way of life. Some people see through the matrix, they move on. I would wager, Steve, and this is the crazy thing, is that a lot of us probably had childhood trauma which made us question life. Why the hell more veterans don't wake up to this? Because I probably reckon a hell of a lot of the forces are problematic childhoods, I
feel sorry for a lot of members of the forces, but I would plea to colleagues I've worked with, to members who are still serving, they really need to start looking inwardly. They need to start listening to the likes of yourselves who are trying to explain the nature of circumstances that's going on in the world today, and ask themselves why they're doing absolutely diddly squat about it, doing nothing about it, or worse still, don't actually care about what's going on. And I will call these people out, and I have done publicly, and I will continue to call people out, especially if they're in positions, let's say positions of some sort of power or authority, or some sort of dignified members of an establishment organization, where they can have some form of effect for the benefit of all, not just for the benefit of their monthly pay or their pensions. They need to start reading what's going on behind the scenes, doing some research instead of just talking the establishment line. Stop bowing down to authority and start acting on the right side of history for the right side of humanity. And I'm sad to say it, not everyone in the Poncho Field repair outfit has got the best interests of the public at heart. And I will call them to their faces cowards, ignorant cowards. Need to seriously get a grip.
Yeah, I can see you've been, I can see you've been through a lot there, obviously. I tried to take a more, it's a difficult one.
Yeah.
The thing is, everything in life's energy, frequency, and vibration. So if we want to affect change, we have to do it through that medium.
Yeah.
And as such, it's going to sound strange, but read any scripture, any Eastern mysticism, the answers are within, right? So I don't care about other people. I mean, I care about other people, but you got a chap, right? He's like my mate Disco Dave. He's never been out the city that he was born in, except he's been to IB for a couple of times. He's basically worked in the same trade for 40 years. He watches the mainstream media religiously, and he never reads books. He's certainly never written any. But Disco Dave, he knows everything. Oh my God, he knows everything. And here's the thing, like, I don't expect him to have the same outlook on life, Steve, as I've got, because I've lived, worked, and travelled in 85 countries across all 7 continents. I've studied an awful. I've studied to master's degree level in the social sciences. I've written 6 books myself. I've studied the occult for, well, you know, since those infamous events in America back in the day. I don't really want Dave to know what I know. That would be a bit like he's had some magic fucking pill or something. So I'm only saying this for people out there. Just, you know, you're on the right journey, folks. But it, you know, that third dimension does drag us back in with our emotions and stuff, and got to just sort of go for. I mean, all right. Here's one for you. Who do you surround yourself with now?
Mostly people who are prepared to spread the light to others.
Yeah, I bet you're surrounded by more genuine people now. People that don't backstab. People that, you know, they genuinely care about you, because I think that's a sign of us going up through the dimensions, Steve.
Exactly. Sadly, and I mean, I have spoken out publicly and berated many members in the military and the police. Essentially, I want to prick their conscience, and I've said this quite openly at disciplinary meetings and what have you with various individuals. I wish to prick a conscience, because members of the police and the military are exemplified by their egoic defects. And that's not a bad thing. We're all born with that. That's what enlightenment is. And I'm sure you'd agree with that, Chris, is you step out of your ego through doing the great work, through doing, you know, you could even say some roots call it the dark night of the soul. You go through a period of darkness when everything you thought about the world happens to be quite different when you look on the other side. And I actually think, without wanting to sound too metaphysical on your show, that the universe, I call it a judgment machine. It wants to guide people into enlightenment, but we, or certainly some individuals, refuse to undertake that pathway. They want to stay firmly rooted to the material world. But what they're missing out in is a huge degree of understanding about the nature of their reality. And I like the fact that you use the term the Matrix on your show. Everybody knows the lead character of the Matrix was a gentleman called Neo, because he represented the neocortex, the higher mind, and that Neo followed a woman called Trinity, because, and I mentioned that slightly earlier about the Holy Trinity, what that refers to. You escape the Trinity, and
Explain it again, Steve, quickly.
Yeah, the Trinity refers to the 3 egoic defects.
Which are
ignorance, apathy, and cowardice. The 3 conditions which prevent enlightenment. And I could almost say categorically, every individual in the planet who's had a certain substance in the last 4 years, I hate to say it, but has been down fundamentally to one of those 3 characteristics. Obviously propelled with the propaganda that's been on TV religiously.
It's pretty, I'm just sort of, I'm sort of defending them a bit, Steve. Not because I want to like. I think I saw Robert Kennedy. He said, "I'm going to push back here," but it's only that I remember when when our lad was born, and I just knew vaguely that there was a certain procedure, had a little acronym. One of the first letter was M. That it had been rumoured that this could cause problems if your kid underwent this procedure, and it could lead to, say, for example, learning disabilities. And the thing that red flagged it for me was every fucking idiot jumped on the bandwagon of, oh, that was just a rogue paper written by a rogue. I'm like, no, so many of you are saying that. You're programmed. You've been programmed. You've listened to this news source. You haven't like assimilated it, taken it in, taken action to find out, and you're just regurgitating as if that makes you sort of like clever or something, right? And so when a little one come along, I said to my girlfriend, look, we got to go and, they'll want to do the thingies soon. The things that they do when a baby gets to like starts at about 2 months or something, doesn't it, or whatever. Anyway, and now mothers are naturally like adamant. No, they're going to have all of them. This is going to protect the. Got to have all. And I was like, whoa, hang on a sec. In our relationship, we were a little bit more mature than that, Steve. We were like, listen, let's not make a decision. Let's sit down and do some research. Let's just do that because I know the M1. Yeah. So we watched a couple of very famous documentaries now. And we got about 6 minutes into the first documentary. And we were like that. He ain't fucking having any of that shit. And I said, you know what? I can stand by if for some random reason, he's perfectly fit and healthy, Steve,
Yeah.
But if for some random reason he went like that, because of the decision we made not for him not to go into that, fucking cattle program, I could live with it because we made the right decision. What I couldn't live with, Steve, was I used to work in learning disabilities. I was a support worker, and some of the lads I looked after were in their 30s, coming up to their 40s, and they were, not to put a finer point in it, they were adult children. They still having temper tantrums and, shit in their pants and not knowing how to go and doing all inappropriate sexual stuff because they didn't have the cognitive facility to deal with the complexity of human life. And it could get very violent. Police would have to be called, to restrain them and stuff. And I'm like, if you made someone undergo something that made them turn out like that, I never forgive them, never forgive myself, never.
Yeah.
But trusting in universe that we're all born perfect, nature knows what it's doing, absolutely. What I wouldn't do is go to corporate, trillionaire in some cases, certainly multi-billionaire psychopaths to tell me how to take charge of my well-being. The stupidity of that, the dumbing down of society to a point where we cannot see that there was so much pressure. And there's lots of theories on it, but one of the reasons was the massive profit that they made. And now when you see people, well, it is what it is, mate. I'm just glad I'm enlightened to it all, and never going to do that. Never going. Not even. We had sorry, I know I'm talking a lot, but I did say to Steve, I want to chat. I don't do interviews. We had a cat recently, a little kitten. Not really my thing, but you do fall in love with these little beings, you know. Anyway, the vet phones up, doesn't it? Oh, it's got to have. You got to bring it in for the old. No, same bullshit, same thing again. You know, same thing again. Sorry, absolutely. When you understand well-being, to people listening, this is not me being stupid or foolish or risque with other people or creatures' health. It's nothing to do with that. It's that when you understand, you will see it completely differently. And going back to your original thing, Steve, is yes, people did naively, you know, queue up to throw themselves in the oven. Because, you know, it's like that chicken. You can pull all the feathers out of a chicken, so it's a bleeding, shivering mess on the floor. And then if you take out a bit of grain and put it in the oven, the chicken will hop in the oven for you. You know, and that's what we saw the last 3 years. Mass indoctrination of a total unenlightened, uninitiated public that are victims. And I don't, you know, it niggles you, doesn't it, mate, when you see military people not you know,
see some of the toughest guys in the army, some real tough guys wandering around with ritualistic face muzzles on. Be quite honest, that book I was writing about human consciousness and brainwashing suddenly made perfect sense when I saw all of that. Now, I thought the military in general were capable of thinking outside of the box. But and I call the last 4 years, I call it the great leveler. It's shown people, it's shown institutions, it's shown nations, it's shown individuals for what they truly stand up for. And when it comes to the crunch, what is it they've stood up for? Well, have they stood up for their own Garden of Eden? Have they stood to protect the Temple of Solomon? No, they've stood up for essentially a brainwashed condition, following a religion which is more broadly known as statism, following the religious orders of the state, or following the state's institutions such as science. It's all hocus pocus, and many people have fallen for it. Enlightenment, why is it important? Because, Chris, as you know, an enlightened individual would not fall for these deceptions at all. It's impossible. It's physically impossible.
Yeah, it's a funny one. Do you ever think then, Steve, we'll wrap this up now because I don't want to go on too long because people won't watch the video in the first place if it's too long. Although fascinating conversation, mate. But here's the thing, you know, look at the issues out there. So you got like save the whale, save the ozone layer, stop the geoengineering of the skies from the aeroplanes going over. You've got Richard Branson, his medical company, going into schools for the children, right?
It will get worse before it gets better.
You've got war, never-ending state of this, phony sham war. You've got the mortgage crisis. You've got the fractional reserve lending. You've got this. It goes on and on. You've got the medical narrative. And then you've got the fact that most people are living in Sodom and Gomorrah, and I'd never thought I'd be using words like it, but what I mean is their lower chakra, their lower vibrational self. They're obsessed with fucking pornography and eating a shit carbohydrate diet that flushes acid around their body, so they all by the time they're 50, they're all having hip transplants and all this kind of stuff, and they're watching utter futile crap on television that by companies that literally despise them, or you know, the cabal who own these companies literally despise, and it goes on and on and on. And here's the thing, it gets so depressing that, do you think you got to step away from that and just work on yourself? I know it's difficult when there's stuff coming out the bloody sky, coming down on you know, heavy metals coming down on our heads.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I will put a caveat on that. Once an individual reaches that enlightenment or understanding of the way of the world and realizes essentially they're in the matrix, and all of these entities in the matrix want to symbiotically feed off them, it becomes almost, let's say, your God-given responsibility to then help pull others out. That doesn't mean to your own detriment, but it is important to do the work for others. It's pointless becoming so worldly wise, enlightened, appreciative of the matrix, the disorders and dysfunctions of society, and not help your fellow man. That's, if you've got the strength of character and the understanding, then that needs to be put forward to others. So I agree with you. If all you can do is save yourselves, save yourselves. But if you've got the strength of character and the determination, that needs to be service towards others. Needs to be something that needs to be considered.
Yeah, so like what we're doing now, Steve, isn't it? You know, we can. I have no doubt that there'll be people watching now that probably a bit confused, to be honest, and that's fine. Just as I would have been with all this stuff like 20 years ago. What are you talking about? What's a matrix? What's energy, vibration? But here's the thing: there will be people out there that have, you know, when you look at Sam Smith, just showing a picture now, mate. This is an iconic pop star who dresses up in bondage gear and dresses up as Satan in his stage shows. He's got Teletubby boots on. Now I know the public think, oh, isn't that cute? They're like Teletubby boot. They don't understand. No, this is a reference to paedophilia. This is about the deprivation of society and exploiting our vulnerable children as well as our own vulnerable bloody minds. And I know there's people out there that are starting to get this now. You can't not see it. Look at Eurovision. The British entry was 4 lads on stage rogering each other, dressed up as boxers in the shower.
Yeah,
I know people are waking up to this, and it's you, beautiful people, that we're talking to now, because you are not wrong. You're on the pathway now, and if we can help them, and also for the people out there that, you know, it don't make sense. If you want it to make sense, it will. It will be down
Chris,
the line.
I mean, if it's not too forthcoming to ask, but or to mention, but I actually teach many of the subjects I've mentioned today. I would like to say I teach enlightenment through the language of occultism, to understand the occult, to understand enlightenment, to understand the matrix. To a lot of people, like you say, it doesn't make any sense at all. I probably sound like a lunatic. But I will appeal to anybody, if anybody wants to email me or get in touch or to come to any of the presentations I do, because this is what I do now. I teach this subject, teach an appreciation of how the world works through the hidden natures of reality.
Yeah, have you given me links so people can get hold of you?
I'm not sure, but if not, I could email you, or I mean, by all means, if you're all right with that. you can
Yeah,
spread that on your channel.
yeah. We'll put Steve's links, folks, in the description box. I'm just looking at, at your photos. I'm just showing them rather. There we go. It doesn't look like you in that one outside Burger King, but
Right.
we all look different on different days, don't we? And yes, and you're, I think we can say this, you have a WhatsApp group called Soldiers Against Ringes.
Yeah. I class it as, it's called Soldiers Against the S word, arm spears. And I think you can guess what that alludes to. And essentially, it's for members who I know in the military to help shed some light on a dark subject. I actually express it as who cares wins. Who cares wins, and I also call it the hardest selection course in the military.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Because essentially what we're going against is our own, you could almost say our own poor viewpoint of how the world works. People are in combat against a narrative which has been forced upon them. People want to fight to save themselves from enlightenment. It's a battle that, like I say, it's the hardest battle in the world, is overcoming the obstacle towards enlightenment. But I'd like to say I can help guide people to the gate, and when they reach the gate, it's up to them whether they want to choose to go through it or not.
Absolutely. Steve, thank you ever so much for coming on the show. Stay on the line, brother, just so I can thank you properly. Links for Steve will be below, folks. Make of this what you will. It's a podcast. You can take from it what helps you on your journey. Can I just say a massive thank you to everybody that's chipped in a $5 for my transatlantic row. So I'm rowing across the Atlantic in December. If you can spare a $5, folks, basically rowing across to show people there's a life after mental health crisis. There's a life after addiction. Too many of my mates have committed suicide. I want to get to people before then and say, hey, when we struggle, it's just the universe holding a mirror up saying, you've got a couple of challenges, son. You'll get over it, and then you'll be firing. Raising some money for service children who've lost a parent. 40% of those kids, that's to suicide. And raising funds to get our veterans off the street and into secure accommodation and training. There's a link in the description box below, folks. If you can get on our socials, that would be great. If you can chuck us a subscribe for this video, that would be awesome. And I'm going to get out of here. Cheers, Steve. Speak to you in a bit.
Thanks, Chris.